Hey everyone, I'm on a mission to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I'd love your help to get there. If you're enjoying the content, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now and join the family.
The Cleveland Browns just crossed a line that might change everything, not just for the team, but for how the entire NFL handles player trust. In the last 24 hours, which started as a quiet frustration inside the locker room, has exploded into a full-blown crisis that no one saw coming. A mother has gone public, a head coach is being accused of lying, and a young quarterback's future might be hanging by a thread. Reports claim that Shedeur Sanders' own mother has accused head coach Kevin Stefanski of fabricating her son's injury to protect the team's image, a move that, if true, could shatter what little credibility the Browns still have. This isn't just another locker room disagreement or a quarterback controversy. This is personal, emotional, and potentially career-ending for everyone involved. Because when a family steps out and risks everything to expose what they believe is deception at the highest level of an NFL organization, you know the situation has gone from bad to nuclear. What's really happening behind closed doors in Cleveland? Let's break down how this story spiraled from a minor roster decision into one of the most explosive scandals the NFL has seen in years. Cleveland has always been a city defined by its loyalty, loyal fans, loyal traditions, and an unshakable belief that this year might finally be different. But lately, that loyalty has been tested like never before. The Browns season, once full of cautious optimism, has completely unraveled. The offense looks broken. The quarterback situation is a mess, and the locker room feels less like a team and more like a collection of players just trying to survive another week. The problems didn't start overnight. For weeks, fans have watched the team slip deeper into dysfunction. Drives stall, miscommunications pile up, and frustration simmers just below the surface. Dillon Gabriel, the current starter, looks uncomfortable and unsure, a symptom of an offense that's lost its rhythm. Meanwhile, sitting quietly on the sidelines is Shedeur Sanders, a young, talented third-round quarterback who once represented the Browns' future. But lately, it's as if he's disappeared completely. No snaps, no mentions, barely a name on the roster update. Fans started asking the same question. What happened to Shedeur Sanders? Was he injured? Was he benched? Or was something else going on behind the scenes? The team offered little clarity, and the silence only made the rumors louder. Analysts started speculating about hidden tension between Sanders and the coaching staff, while fans flooded social media demanding answers. Then came the explanation. Simple, clean, and easy to digest. Head coach Kevin Stefanski told reporters that Shedeur had suffered a back issue, a minor injury that kept him from being active on game day. Most people accepted it at face value. After all, players get hurt all the time, right? But there was something about this story that didn't sit right. It felt too convenient, too perfectly timed. And for those who'd been paying attention, the Browns' pattern of secrecy and confusion was becoming all too familiar. Still, even the most skeptical fans couldn't have predicted what was about to happen next, because within days, the story took a sharp turn, one that would ignite a storm no PR department could contain. Shedeur's mother, Pilar Sanders, decided she'd heard enough, and when she finally spoke, she didn't hold back. The Browns weren't just struggling anymore. They were imploding in real time. And as it turned out, that so-called injury might have been the match that lit the fuse. It started with what looked like a routine press conference, the kind coaches give every week to explain another disappointing performance. Kevin Stefanski stepped to the podium, calm and collected as always, and when the questions turned to Shedeur Sanders' sudden absence, he had a ready answer.
Ready answer. He's dealing with a little back tightness, Stfansky said. He tried to go through warm-ups, but ultimately, we decided it was best to hold him out. Simple, measured, non-controversial, the kind of statement that would normally end any speculation. Within hours, every major sports outlet had picked up the story. Shedeur Sanders sidelined with back injury. Browns rookie QB dealing with tightness. It became the official narrative, one that painted the organization as cautious and responsible. But while fans accepted the explanation, one person wasn't buying it. Shedeur's mother, Pilar Sanders, had stayed silent for weeks as she watched her son get overlooked, but when she heard Stefanski's statement, something inside her, ready answer, He's dealing with a little back tightness, Stefanski said. He tried to go through warm-ups, but ultimately we decided it was best to hold him out. Simple, measured, non-controversial, the kind of statement that would normally end any speculation. Within hours, every major sports outlet had picked up the story. Shedeur Sanders sidelined with back injury. Browns rookie QB dealing with tightness. It became the official narrative, one that painted the organization as cautious and responsible. But while fans accepted the explanation, one person wasn't buying it. Shadour's mother, Pilar Sanders, had stayed silent for weeks as she watched her son get overlooked, but when she heard Stefanski's statement, something inside her snapped. Because according to her, the coach wasn't just spinning the truth, he was rewriting it completely. In a series of now viral social media posts, Pilar went scorched earth. She said point blank that her son had never had a back injury, no tightness, no pre-game issues, no medical evaluations, nothing. Shadur, she said, had gone through every practice, healthy and prepared, only to find out hours before kickoff that he was being made inactive, with no explanation. It wasn't until later, when reporters started asking questions, that the injury excuse appeared out of nowhere. Her words hit like a grenade. "Don't lie about my son. He was ready, he was cleared, and he was told he wasn't playing for reasons that had nothing to do with his health." Within minutes, her posts were spreading across the internet, shared by fans, analysts, even former players. Some dismissed her as an emotional parent defending her child, but others saw something more, a woman exposing what she believed to be a calculated lie designed to protect the coaching staff's reputation. If Pilar was telling the truth, it meant that Kevin Stefanski hadn't just made a questionable football decision, he'd crossed an ethical line that few in the NFL dare to touch. Because fabricating an injury isn't just bad optics, it's deception, it's manipulation. And in a league where honesty between coaches and players is everything, it's the kind of move that can completely destroy trust inside a locker room. By the time the dust began to settle, one thing was clear. This was no longer about football. This was about integrity. And the Browns, already drowning in dysfunction, were now facing accusations that could tear the entire organization apart. But Pilar wasn't finished, not even close, because what she revealed next would turn this controversy from a heated dispute into a full-blown scandal that threatened to end careers. When Pilar decided to speak, she didn't do it halfway. She didn't hide behind vague insinuations or cryptic posts. She went straight to the point, and she went public. Her words weren't emotional outbursts or passive-aggressive jabs. They were precise, confident, and backed by what she claimed was proof. She didn't just say her son was healthy, she laid out the timeline in exact detail. According to Pilar, Shadur practiced all week without a single medical issue. He completed every drill, threw with full strength, and went through normal film sessions. There was never a trainer's note, never a doctor's check-in, never a whisper about any discomfort. He was prepped to serve as the number 2 quarterback, ready to step in if needed, until the morning before the game, when everything suddenly changed. Pilar's post described how Shadur was blindsided by the coaching staff, told just hours before kickoff that he wouldn't be active. No explanation, no warning, just a quiet roster change that made no sense. Then when the public started asking questions, the injury excuse appeared out of nowhere.
Pilar called it a cover-up, a fabricated excuse to justify a decision that had nothing to do with injury. But what made her statement even more shocking wasn't just the accusation. It was her challenge. Pilar publicly dared the Browns to release medical documentation proving their version of events. "If my son was hurt," she wrote, "show the report, show the treatment record, show anything that says he had a back issue, because there isn't one." It wasn't just a mother defending her son. It was an open call-out of an NFL head coach, live for millions to see. And the reaction was instant. Fans flooded the comments, some stunned, others furious. Reporters began digging. Former players chimed in, saying they'd seen similar tactics before. Teams inventing minor injuries to hide internal decisions. The sports world split into 2 camps. Those who believed Pilar was simply protecting her son, and those who suspected she might actually be exposing a dirty secret teams hoped would never surface. But what made Pilar's words hit harder was who she was. This wasn't a parent unfamiliar with the system. This was someone who had lived it. She had spent years married to Deion Sanders, one of the most outspoken figures in football, and she understood how the game and the politics really worked. Pilar knew when to stay quiet. The fact that she was speaking now meant she believed there was no other option. Reports claimed that before going public, she discussed the situation privately with close family, even consulting with Deion about the fallout her statement could cause. They knew the risks: media backlash, league attention, potential career consequences for Shedeur. But they also knew something bigger was at stake: the truth. And once Pilar spoke, there was no going back. Her words weren't just trending online, they were echoing through the NFL. Coaches were being asked if they'd ever seen injury reports used as strategic cover. Players were texting each other, wondering who they could trust. And inside the Browns organization, panic was starting to spread. Because when a mother with nothing to gain and everything to lose calls out a coach by name and challenges him to prove her wrong, it's not just a PR issue anymore. It's a credibility crisis. And in Cleveland, that crisis was only just beginning. The moment Pilar Sanders' posts went live, the entire football world erupted. What started as a single accusation turned into a digital wildfire that no one, not the Browns, not the league, not even the Sanders family, could contain. Within hours, hashtags were trending, sports talk shows were scrambling to rewrite their scripts, and fans were locked in a full-blown civil war online. Half of Cleveland was furious at Kevin Stefanski, calling for his suspension and demanding the truth. "If he lied about an injury, he's done," one fan tweeted, echoing the growing outrage. The other half rushed to his defense, arguing that no NFL coach would risk his career by fabricating something so easily disproved. But underneath all the noise, one thing was undeniable: the story had legs. And it wasn't just fans talking anymore. Major outlets like ESPN, Bleacher Report, and Fox Sports began dissecting Pilar's claims line by line. Analysts debated whether there could be any plausible misunderstanding, or if this was something much darker. Former players, including a few who had worn the Browns jersey themselves, started weighing in. Several admitted they'd seen similar situations before, where injuries were used to cover for a coach's controversial decisions. One retired player put it bluntly: "Teams lie about injuries all the time. They just don't get caught."
As the headlines spread, the Browns' locker room turned tense. Players who once brushed off rumors now found themselves whispering between drills. Some stood behind Stfansky publicly, but privately, trust was fading fast. According to insiders, the mood inside the facility shifted from confusion to suspicion overnight. Guys started wondering, if they can lie about Shedeur, who's next? Even veterans who had been through years of dysfunction said this felt different. It wasn't just about a quarterback controversy anymore, it was about credibility. Coaches preach honesty and accountability every day, yet here was an accusation that undercut that message completely. Sources close to the team claimed that some players even confronted position coaches, demanding answers about whether the story was true. But no one had clear information, just conflicting accounts and growing unease. Meanwhile, the national media fanned the flames. Every segment, every tweet, every podcast added more pressure. Speculative reports surfaced suggesting that ownership had already begun quietly reviewing internal communications around the injury report. Stfansky, once praised for his composure, suddenly looked cornered, avoiding direct questions about Pilar's statements and repeating the same vague lines about protecting the player. But it wasn't working. The Browns' attempts to control the narrative were failing in real time. The more they stayed silent, the louder the noise became. Fans began calling it Backgate, a nickname that spread faster than the team's PR staff could delete comments. And while Cleveland tried to keep the focus on football, the conversation had moved far beyond the field. This was now a public showdown between a powerful organization and a family determined to defend their truth. The fallout was no longer just about who was right or wrong, it was about trust,
power, and reputation. And inside the Browns facility, that trust was collapsing one whispered conversation at a time. But the chaos wasn't limited to players and fans, because behind closed doors, ownership had seen enough, and what came next would send shockwaves through the entire organization. Behind the tinted glass of the Browns' headquarters in Berea, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. What had started as a social media controversy had now exploded into an internal crisis, and everyone, from the front office to the equipment staff, could feel the pressure building. The phones weren't stopping, reporters were calling, players' agents were demanding answers, and most importantly, ownership wanted to know what the hell was going on. Jimmy Haslam, the Browns' owner, was reportedly furious, not just about the public embarrassment, but about the fact that no one seemed to have a straight answer. One version of events was coming from Kevin Stefanski and the coaching staff. Shedeur Sanders had reported minor tightness, the team made a safety decision, and the story got blown out of proportion. But from Shedeur's camp, a completely different narrative. According to Pilar and those close to her son, there was never a complaint, never a diagnosis, and never any indication of a back issue. Haslam demanded documentation, practice reports, trainer notes, medical evaluations, anything that could verify what Stfansky had told the media. And when those reports didn't match the timeline being shared online, panic set in. Quote, the numbers weren't adding up. There was no consistent record showing Shedeur had received treatment for a back problem. Nothing official, nothing at all.
In the span of a few days, the Browns' carefully controlled structure started to crumble. Assistant coaches began whispering about inconsistencies in Stfansky's story. Some said the injury explanation was created last minute after the decision to make Shedeur inactive. Others claimed it was a miscommunication that got misinterpreted by the media. But one thing was clear, everyone was scrambling to protect themselves. Behind closed doors, Team PR was in full crisis mode, drafting talking points and telling staff not to discuss the situation publicly. Players were instructed to focus on football. But how could they? Every locker room conversation circled back to the same question: did the coach lie? Even team veterans, the ones usually immune to drama, were starting to break their silence. Myles Garrett, one of the Browns' most respected voices, reportedly asked for a closed-door meeting with Stfansky to get clarity on what had happened. Others quietly reached out to their agents, wanting to know how far this could go and whether the league might get involved. Meanwhile, sources close to Shedeur claimed that the young quarterback was confused but composed. He hadn't made any public statement, likely on the advice of his representatives, but behind the scenes, he was said to be disappointed and embarrassed. He feels like they made him look soft, one person familiar with the situation told reporters. And for a player trying to build a career, that's devastating. The contradictions within the organization only made things worse. Some members of the medical staff quietly admitted they were caught off guard by the public injury statement. Others said they were told to let it go and avoid making any comments. The deeper people looked, the more it appeared that the story had been patched together on the fly, a quick fix that had now detonated in the team's face. At this point, Haslam was reportedly considering his options: fire Stfansky mid-season and risk another rebuild, or keep him in place and let the season burn. Either choice carried massive consequences, both for the locker room and the team's reputation. But the panic wasn't just about damage control anymore. It was about trust, or rather, the complete collapse of it. The Browns had built an image around discipline and professionalism. Now that image was being shredded by accusations of dishonesty, ego, and mismanagement. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get any worse, whispers started spreading through league circles that the NFL itself might step in. Because if injury reports were being manipulated, this wasn't just a Browns problem anymore. Cleveland wasn't just losing games, it was losing control of its own narrative. And inside those front office walls, one question echoed louder than the rest: who's telling the truth and who's about to take the fall? For Shadur Sanders, this never was supposed to be the story. He wasn't looking for headlines, controversy, or chaos. He just wanted a chance to prove himself. But after everything that's unfolded, his future in Cleveland looks less like a question and more like a countdown. The Browns are now sitting on a ticking bomb, and every decision they make from here on out will determine whether this franchise salvages its dignity or spirals even further into dysfunction. Behind the scenes, Shedur's camp is weighing their options carefully. One path is the most obvious, requesting a trade. Sources close to the family say discussions about a fresh start have already taken place. And honestly, who could blame them? Once trust between a player and a coaching staff
is broken, there's no easy fix. You can't rebuild chemistry when the player's family has publicly accused the head coach of lying to the entire football world. The locker room might pretend to move on, but everyone remembers. Everyone's watching. The second path is the quieter one, staying put, at least for now. Shadur could take the high road, focus on his work, and let his performance speak for itself, but that's easier said than done. Every time his name appears in the media, it's tied to this scandal. Every time his mom's post gets reshared, it reopens the wound. Even if he stays silent, the shadow of this controversy will follow him on the field, in team meetings, and in every sidelong glance from the coaching staff. Then there's the third path, the one no one wants to say out loud, but everyone's thinking about: the Browns' clean house. Rumors are already circulating that ownership could part ways with Kevin Stefanski if the situation keeps escalating. Haslam is known for his impatience, and multiple insiders have suggested that the organization is quietly exploring contingency plans for leadership changes. A new coach could mean a new start for Shadur, a chance to rebuild the bridge that Stfansky burned. But make no mistake, whatever happens next will define not just Shedur's career, but the entire franchise's reputation. If the Browns stand by Stfansky, it sends a message that accountability doesn't matter, that a player's integrity can be sacrificed to protect management. But if they side with the Sanders family, they're admitting their own internal dysfunction. It's a lose-lose situation for everyone involved. And then there's Deion Sanders. He hasn't made a public comment, at least not yet, but everyone knows he's watching. This is his son, his legacy, his name. Behind the scenes, reports claim that Deion has been advising Shadur to stay professional while quietly exploring better opportunities. The Sanders family has connections across the league, and that matters. If they decide Cleveland is no longer a place where Shadur can grow, you can bet other teams will start paying attention. Meanwhile, inside the Browns facility, morale has cratered. Teammates who once joked around during practice now walk in silence. Some players have privately said they feel stuck in a storm that has nothing to do with football. And for a young quarterback like Shadur, who should be developing under stable leadership, this kind of environment is poison. If there's one thing the NFL teaches every player, it's that perception is everything. Once a player is labeled as problematic, it can follow them for years, even if the real problem was never theirs. That's exactly what worries the Sanders family. They're not just fighting a PR battle, they're fighting for Shedur's reputation, his chance to build a future free from a lie he didn't create. So now, both sides stand at a breaking point. Stefanski's credibility is hanging by a thread. Haslam's patience is wearing thin. The locker room is fractured. And Shadur? He's standing in the middle of it all. Silent, composed, but undoubtedly watching everything unfold. If the Browns make the wrong move now, they don't just lose a promising quarterback, they lose the trust of their players, their fans, and maybe even the league itself. Because this isn't just about who plays on Sunday, it's about what kind of organization Cleveland wants to be when the spotlight hits hardest.
This situation might have started with one player and one coach, but it's no longer just about Cleveland. It's about something much bigger, the very integrity of the NFL. Because if there's even a chance that a team fabricated or exaggerated an injury to manipulate public perception, that cuts to the heart of what the league claims to stand for: transparency, fairness, and trust. And when those values are compromised, the entire system starts to crack. Let's be clear. Injury reports aren't just paperwork. They're a cornerstone of the NFL's credibility. Teams are required by league policy to provide accurate and timely information about player availability. It's not just for the fans or the media, it's for the league itself, for betting integrity, and for competitive fairness. When you list a player as injured, that affects game planning, odds, and even roster decisions across the league. Falsifying that kind of information isn't just shady, it's dangerous. That's why league officials are reportedly monitoring this situation closely. According to insiders, the NFL office has taken note of the controversy and may initiate a quiet review of the Browns' recent injury reports. If they find inconsistencies, missing medical documentation, conflicting trainer notes, or any sign that the team knowingly misled the public, the consequences could be severe. We're talking fines, suspensions, and even possible loss of draft capital. But even beyond league discipline, there's a deeper problem here, the human one. When a coaching staff lies about a player's health, it does more than bend a rule. It tells every man in that locker room that honesty is optional, that image matters more than truth, and that protecting egos comes before protecting people. And that's a culture killer. Because once players start believing the staff can't be trusted, everything else, the strategy, the effort, the belief, starts to fall apart. Players talk. They always do. And word spreads fast around the league. If Cleveland becomes known as the team that lies to cover its mistakes, that reputation sticks. Free agents hesitate. Agents warn their clients. Other players question whether they'd ever want to sign there. In a league built on relationships, that kind of reputation can take years to undo. Meanwhile, media voices are already framing this as one of the most dangerous precedents in recent NFL history. If coaches can invent injuries to avoid scrutiny, what else are they willing to hide? One analyst said. It's a fair question, because if this kind of deception goes unchecked, it opens the door to every kind of manipulation imaginable. A fake injury today could turn into a hidden suspension tomorrow, or a cover story for locker room drama the next week. The Browns are now the example, whether they like it or not. Their decisions will shape how every other organization handles internal tension going forward. Do you come clean and own your mistakes? Or do you double down and risk burning your credibility to ashes? And for the league, the stakes are even higher. In an era where sports betting and fantasy football tie billions of dollars to accurate information, even the appearance of dishonesty in injury reporting can cause chaos. It's not just about fairness anymore. It's about money, regulation, and public trust. If a team is caught manipulating that system, the fallout could go far beyond fines and headlines. It could shake confidence in the entire league. So yes, this started as a Cleveland story, but now it's an NFL story, one that every coach, player, and executive is watching closely. Because the question isn't just whether Kevin Stefanski lied, it's whether the league has the backbone to confront the possibility that one of its own did.
And if they don't handle this right, if they sweep it under the rug like so many scandals before, then the message is clear. Honesty is optional, accountability is negotiable, and integrity is nothing more than a buzzword. For the Browns, that could mean another lost season. But for the NFL, it could mean something far worse, the erosion of the very trust that keeps the game alive. Kevin Stefanski has always been known as calm under pressure, the kind of coach who never lets emotions dictate his decisions. But right now, calm is the last word anyone would use to describe his situation. His name, once synonymous with quiet professionalism, is now tangled in one of the ugliest controversies the Cleveland Browns have ever faced. And make no mistake, this isn't just about a bad call or a losing streak anymore. This is about credibility, and whether the man leading the Browns can still be trusted to lead anyone. Inside the organization, Stfansky is walking a tightrope. Every press conference feels like a minefield. Every question from reporters sounds like an accusation in disguise. When he looks into the cameras, fans see a coach trying to sound composed, but they can also sense the tension, the hesitation in his voice. He keeps repeating the same line, "We're focused on football." But the truth is, no one's buying it anymore. Behind closed doors, Stefansky's position has become almost impossible to defend. If he admits that the back injury was exaggerated, he essentially confesses to lying to ownership, the media, and his own players. But if he continues to deny it, he's calling Pilar Sanders, and by extension the Sanders family, liars in front of millions of people. Either way, he loses. It's a no-win situation, and everyone in the league knows it. Jimmy Haslam, meanwhile, is under enormous pressure to act. The owner's phone hasn't stopped ringing. League officials, reporters, and even other team executives are asking how he plans to handle this mess. Haslam's history with coaches is notoriously turbulent. He's fired and replaced more head coaches than almost any other owner in the NFL. And yet, he's also been known to hold on to people longer than he should, hoping loyalty might eventually pay off. This time, though, even his patience seems to be wearing thin. The front office is split. Some executives believe firing Stefanski mid-season would be catastrophic, that it would send the team into even deeper chaos. Others argue the opposite. Keeping him would only make things worse. The players don't trust him, one insider reportedly said. Once that's gone, you can't coach your way out of it. And there's truth to that. Trust is everything in an NFL locker room. You can lose games, you can lose tempers, but once you lose your players, you've lost the team for good. Rumors suggest that several veterans have quietly distanced themselves from Stfansky, showing up, doing their job, and saying little else. The energy is different, colder, heavier, the kind of silence that tells you the locker room has already made up its mind.
The irony is almost tragic. Stfansky built his reputation on being the steady hand, the man who could bring order to Cleveland's chaos. Now, he's the center of it. And with every passing day, the scandal grows bigger, the questions louder, and the walls tighter around him. If the Browns fire him, it confirms what everyone suspects, that something deeply wrong happened behind the scenes. But if they keep him, they risk alienating their players, their fans, and maybe even the league itself. It's a lose-lose scenario, the kind that can define or destroy an entire franchise. And as the days tick by, one thing is becoming clearer. No matter what Kevin Stefanski says next, no one's going to take it at face value. Because once a coach's word becomes questionable, his authority vanishes. And in the NFL, when your players stop believing you, your time is already up. The Stfansky dilemma isn't just about a coach under fire. It's about what happens when the man meant to lead loses the one thing a leader can't afford to lose, the truth. When all the noise fades, the press conferences, the tweets, the endless debate, what remains is a simple truth. Something inside the Cleveland Browns is broken. This wasn't supposed to happen. A promising season derailed, a locker room divided, and a young quarterback's reputation caught in the crossfire of politics, pride, and panic. What started as a single questionable decision has now snowballed into a full-scale crisis that threatens to redefine the Browns' entire identity. Pilar Sanders didn't just call out a lie. She exposed a culture. One where accountability is optional, where loyalty is one-sided, and where perception is prioritized over truth. Whether you agree with her or not, her courage to speak out forced the NFL to confront an uncomfortable question. How far are teams willing to go to protect their image? And more importantly, who pays the price when they do? For Shedeur Sanders, this saga could have destroyed his confidence. But instead, it's shown his composure. He hasn't lashed out or added fuel to the fire. He stayed professional, even while being painted as a problem. That silence speaks volumes.
It's the kind of quiet strength that fans notice and that other teams respect. In many ways, the Browns' mishandling of the situation might have hurt them far more than it hurt him. Because in exposing themselves, they've revealed the very dysfunction players have long whispered about behind closed doors. And then there's Kevin Stefanski, a coach who once symbolized calm leadership, now standing at the center of a storm he may not survive. Maybe he panicked. Maybe he tried to control the narrative. Or maybe this was just a miscommunication that spiraled out of control. Whatever the truth is, one thing is certain. His credibility will never fully recover from this. In the NFL, perception is reality. And right now, the perception is brutal. And as for Jimmy Haslam and the Browns organization, their next move will define everything. Do they defend their coach and risk their integrity? Or do they face the truth head-on and rebuild what's left of their trust? There's no middle ground left. You can't claim transparency while hiding behind silence. You can't preach accountability while protecting deception. Fans deserve answers. Players deserve honesty. And Shedeur Sanders deserves better than to have his name dragged through the mud because of internal politics. If what Pilar Sanders said is true, if the Browns really did fabricate or exaggerate an injury, then this isn't just a PR scandal. It's a moral one. It's about respect for players, for fans, for the game
Itself. Because when you lie about a player's health, you're not just rewriting a press release, you're rewriting someone's career. And that's what makes this story so explosive. It's not about one mother's outrage or one coach's mistake. It's about what happens when truth becomes optional in a business built on trust. It's about the consequences of dishonesty in a world that demands loyalty. The Browns are standing at a crossroads now, and whichever path they choose will echo far beyond this season. They can either confront the truth and begin to repair what's been broken, or keep spinning their story until there's nothing left to spin. Because in the end, every organization faces a moment like this, where doing what's right costs more than staying silent. And how they respond doesn't just reveal their strategy, it reveals their soul. The truth doesn't destroy a franchise, one former player said. Lying does. And if Cleveland doesn't learn that lesson soon, this scandal won't just end careers, it'll define them.